There is a card in the tarot deck that people fear more than any other. When it appears, the reader often pauses. The questioner holds their breath. It shows a tower, solid, proud, reaching toward heaven, struck by lightning, its crown blown off, figures falling headlong through flame and smoke into the abyss below. Everything crumbles. Everything burns. The Tower card means collapse. And yet Neville Goddard, standing in a Los Angeles hotel ballroom in 1954, told his audience something that should have sounded mad. The old man must die. And I tell you, when your world falls apart, when everything you thought was solid turns to ash, that is not punishment. That is not failure. That is the birth canal. What if the Tower card and Neville's teaching on the death of the old man are not two different teachings? What if they are the same teaching, spoken in different languages? What if destruction, the kind that leaves nothing standing, is not the opposite of manifestation, but its deepest precondition? Tonight, we're going to explore when collapse is the answer, when the burning structure is not your enemy, but your liberator, and how to tell the difference between a Tower card event, a clearing, a sacred demolition, and mere chaos. This is Neville Goddard Universe. Welcome. If you're here, you already sense that Neville Goddard's teachings are not an isolated modern anomaly, but part of a vast, interconnected web of mystical and esoteric truth that spans centuries and continents. Each week on this channel, we take one of Neville's core principles and place it beside a parallel concept from another tradition. Hermeticism, Kabbalah, Vedanta, the law of attraction, psychology, quantum theory, tarot. Not to dilute Neville's teaching, but to see it reflected back at itself, confirmed, deepened, made richer. In this episode, we're going to explore one of the most misunderstood and feared symbols in the Western esoteric tradition, the Tower card of the tarot, and show you how it is not only compatible with Neville's teaching on the death of the old man, but is in fact the exact same teaching. We're going to walk through what Neville meant when he said your false assumptions must collapse, why that collapse is not your failure but your freedom, and how to use a 3-step practice drawn directly from his lectures to release the burning structure, enter the void, and plant the new assumption in fertile ground. If you've ever felt your life crumbling around you and wondered whether you were doing something wrong, or if you've ever sensed that you need to let go of an entire identity, an entire story, but you're terrified of what comes next, this episode is for you. And if this kind of exploration speaks to you, if you feel the resonance between these streams of truth the way I do, a like or a subscription helps this work reach others who are ready for it. I'm grateful you're here. Let's begin. Neville Goddard told us again and again, consciousness is the only reality. The world you see is yourself pushed out. What you are conscious of being, you become. And if you wish to change what you are experiencing, you must change what you are conscious of being. Simple enough. And yet, there is a corollary to this teaching that Neville did not shy away from, but that many modern interpreters gloss over or soften. If you wish to become a new man, the old man must die. Not metaphorically, not symbolically in some distant, poetic sense. Neville meant it in the most concrete psychological and spiritual terms. The old man, the version of you built on false assumptions, on inherited beliefs, on the story you've been telling yourself about who you are and what is possible, that man must be utterly destroyed. Not reformed, not improved, not gently adjusted, destroyed. In his 1954 lecture, The Old Man Must Die, Neville said this: "You cannot put new wine into old wineskins. The old must be completely destroyed to make way for the new. When you assume a new state, the old state, with all its reactions, all its memories, all its limitations, must die." Now, let us be clear about what this means in practice. Imagine a woman who has spent 20 years identifying as someone who struggles with money. She has evidence for this identity. She has bank statements, memories of rejection, patterns of lack stretching back to childhood. That identity is not just an idea. It is woven into her nervous system, her habitual thoughts, her inner conversations, her expectations. It is the old man. When Neville tells her to assume she is wealthy, He is not asking her to add wealth onto her existing self-concept. He is asking her to become a different person. And that means the woman who struggles with money must cease to exist. Her inner world must collapse. The structure she has lived in, however familiar, however solid it feels, must burn. And here is where people stumble. Because when that collapse begins to happen, when the old assumptions start to crack, it does not feel like victory. It feels like disaster. Old friends fall away. Old certainties dissolve. The very ground beneath your feet seems to give way. And the mind, terrified, cries out, "I must be doing something wrong. I must have failed. This is not what I wanted." But Neville said, and I tell you, listen closely to this. What appears as collapse is the removal of false assumptions. The destruction is not your punishment. It is the preparation of the soil. He put it this way in a 1951 lecture. When your world begins to crack, do not shore it up. Let it fall. You are not losing your foundation. You are discovering you never had one. And now, for the first time, you can build on something real. Let me give you a concrete example. A man came to one of Neville's lectures in the early 1950s. He had been in the same career for 15 years, a career that paid well, that his family respected, that defined him in the eyes of everyone who knew him. But he hated it. He felt dead inside. He wanted to write. He wanted to create. But he had a mortgage, children, responsibilities. So he came to Neville and asked, "How do I manifest a career as a writer without losing everything I've built?" And Neville told him, "You cannot. The man who needs security from a job he hates cannot become the man who lives by his creative word. One of those men must die. And I tell you, if you dare to assume you are the writer, the old structure will collapse. It must. And that collapse will be your answer, not your problem." The man went home. He began to practice what Neville taught. He entered the state of the wish fulfilled. He felt himself as the writer. He persisted in that assumption. And within 6 months his company restructured. His position was eliminated. He was let go. To the outer world, it looked like disaster. To his family, it looked like failure. But the man understood. The old wineskin had burst. The structure that could not contain the new assumption had been removed. And within a year, he was writing full-time. Not because he fought for it, but because the old man, the man who clung to security and died a little every day, was gone. This is what Neville meant by blessed collapse. The destruction is not random. It is not punishment. It is the direct, inevitable consequence of assuming a new state. The old cannot coexist with the new, and if you persist in the new assumption, the old must fall away. But, and this is crucial, not all collapse is blessed, not all destruction is a tower card clearing. Some chaos is simply the thrashing of a mind that refuses to choose. Some destruction is the result of resisting the very collapse that would free you. Neville gave us a test, a way to tell the difference. And we'll come to that. But first, let us turn to the tarot and see how the same teaching was encoded centuries earlier in the image of the tower. The tower is the 16th card of the major arcana. In the Rider-Waite deck, which most modern readers use, it shows a tall stone tower built on a rocky peak. A bolt of lightning strikes the crown of the tower, blowing it off. Flames pour from the windows. 2 figures, a man and a woman, or a king and a servant, depending on the interpretation, fall headfirst toward the ground below. The sky is dark. The scene is violent, sudden, absolute. For centuries, this card has been read as catastrophe, unexpected upheaval, ruin, loss. And, in a superficial reading, that is what it is. But the deeper esoteric meaning of the tower, the meaning that aligns it perfectly with Neville's teaching, is this: the tower represents the destruction of false structures built on false foundations. Let me say that again, because it is the hinge of this entire episode. The tower does not represent the destruction of what is real. It represents the destruction of what was never real to begin with. The ego's fortress, the mind's illusions, the assumptions built on fear and separation and inherited belief. Arthur Edward Waite, the occultist who designed the Rider-Waite deck, wrote in The Pictorial Key to the Tarot that the tower symbolizes the ruin of the house of life when it is built on false foundations. He called it a card of liberation by catastrophe. Liberation, not punishment. Liberation. Paul Foster Case, another tarot scholar and member of the esoteric order known as the Builders of the Adytum, went further. He wrote that the tower is the breaking down of existing forms to make way for new ones. It is the necessary destruction of the old to permit the birth of the new. The lightning is the descent of divine energy into the false structure of the personality, shattering it so that the true self may emerge. Now, listen to how closely that parallels what Neville said. Divine energy, which Neville called imagination, or God in man, descends into the false structure of the personality and shatters it. The old man must die. The tower must fall. In the Kabbalistic system that underlies much of tarot interpretation, the tower is associated with the planet Mars and the Hebrew letter Pe, which means mouth. The mouth speaks the word. And in the beginning, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. When you speak a new word, when you assume a new state, the old structure that contradicts that word cannot stand. It is struck by lightning. It falls. The figures falling from the tower are not victims. They are liberated prisoners. They have been living in a tower, a structure of stone, cold and rigid, and they did not know they were trapped until the lightning came. The fall is terrifying, yes, but it is also the only way out. Here is the recognition I want you to see clearly. Neville's teaching on the death of the old man and the tower card are not two different teachings that happen to rhyme. They are the same teaching. One comes from the mystical Christianity and metaphysical idealism that Neville drew from. The other comes from the Western esoteric tradition encoded in the tarot. But both say this: if you wish to become new, the structure built on the old must be destroyed, and that destruction is not your enemy. It is your answer. Let me show you where they converge even more precisely. Neville taught that your assumptions create your reality. If you assume you are limited, you will experience limitation. If you assume you are free, you will experience freedom. But, and this is the part people miss, you cannot hold two contradictory assumptions at the same time and expect coherence. You cannot assume you are wealthy and simultaneously assume you are poor. You cannot assume you are loved and simultaneously assume you are unworthy. One must go. And when you choose the new assumption and persist in it, the old assumption does not fade gently into the background. It collapses. Often suddenly. Often dramatically. The tower is struck. The crown, the false sense of sovereignty, the ego's claim to control is blown off. And everything built on that old assumption falls with it. This is what Neville meant in his 1950s lectures when he said, "What appears as collapse is the removal of false assumptions." The structure was built on sand. It could not hold. And when the new assumption, the rock, the truth, is laid down, the false structure must give way. Now, here is where it gets practical. How do you know whether what you are experiencing is a tower card clearing, a blessed collapse, a sacred demolition, or just chaos? How do you distinguish between the destruction that liberates and the destruction that simply destroys? Neville gave us a test. He said, ask yourself, what assumption is this serving? If the collapse is the death of an old assumption and you are persisting in a new one, you will feel, beneath the chaos, a strange sense of rightness. You will feel the ground clearing. You will feel space opening. You may grieve. You may be afraid. But you will not feel lost. You will feel like something true is finally being born. But if the collapse is simply the result of unconscious assumptions, fear, doubt, unworthiness running unchecked, you will feel only confusion. There will be no clearing, only noise. And the structure will fall, yes, but nothing will grow in its place because no new assumption has been planted. The tower card event is a clearing. Chaos is just noise. The difference is consciousness. The difference is whether you have dared to assume something new and are holding to it while the old burns away, or whether you are simply thrashing in the dark, at the mercy of every unconscious belief you've ever inherited. And this brings us to the question the thumbnail promised to answer. When is destruction the answer? The answer is this: when the structure you are living in was built on a false assumption, and you have chosen to assume something true. Then the destruction is not something you must fear or avoid. It is something you must allow. It is the answer. It is the lightning. It is the birth canal. Let the tower fall. So how do you work with this teaching? How do you move through a tower card clearing without losing your center? How do you let the old structure burn without being consumed by it? Neville gave us the method, and it has 3 steps, drawn directly from his lectures and writings. I'm going to walk you through them now, as if you and I are sitting together, and you are about to enter into this practice tonight. Step 1. Release the burning structure. This is an act of conscious surrender. You must stop trying to hold the old structure together. If your world is crumbling, if something in your life is falling apart, a relationship, a career, an identity, do not shore it up out of fear. Do not cling to it simply because it is familiar. Instead, in your imagination, see it clearly. See the structure, the old assumption, the old story, the old version of yourself, and see it burning. Neville often used the image of a house. Imagine your old assumption as a house you have been living in. You know every room. You know every crack in the walls. It is not a good house. It is cold. It is small. But it is yours, and you are afraid to leave it. Now see it on fire. See the flames consuming it. And instead of running back inside to save it, step back. Let it burn. Say to yourself, out loud if you can, the old man is dying. I let him go. This is not passive. This is not defeat. This is conscious release. You are not a victim of the fire. You are the one who struck the match. You chose the new assumption, and this burning is its consequence. Let it be. Step 2. Enter the void. When the structure falls, there is a moment, sometimes a day, sometimes a week, sometimes longer, when there is nothing. No old structure. No new structure yet visible. Just emptiness. Just silence. The tarot calls this the space between the tower and the star, which is the card that follows it. Neville called it the Sabbath, the rest, the interval. Do not rush to fill this space. Do not panic in the silence. This is the fertile void. This is the moment when the soil is cleared and ready to receive the seed. In your meditation, in your inner work, allow yourself to rest in the awareness of I am. Not I am this or I am that, just I am. Pure consciousness, pure presence. No identity, no story, just the awareness of being. Neville said, I am is the name of God. Before you attach anything to it, rest in it, feel it. You are not what you were, you are not yet what you will be, but you are, and that is enough. Sit with that. Breathe with that. Let the void be spacious. Let it be still. This is where the new is conceived. This is the womb. Step 3. Plant the new assumption. Now, and only now, when the old structure has burned and you have rested in the void, you plant the seed of the new assumption. This is where Neville's technique of living in the end comes in. This is where you enter the state of the wish fulfilled and feel it as real. But here's the key. You are not planting this assumption on top of the old one. There is no old one. It is gone. The ground is clear. The soil is fresh. You are planting in emptiness. And that is why it will grow. Let me walk you through it as if we are doing it together now. Close your eyes. Bring to mind the new assumption, the state you wish to embody, not what you want to have, what you want to be. Who is the person who lives in the new structure? What does it feel like to be him? What does it feel like to be her? Construct a simple scene that implies this assumption is true. Neville always said, make it simple, make it sensory. Make it something that could only happen if the assumption were already a fact. If your new assumption is, I am financially free, your scene might be checking your bank balance and feeling calm abundance. If your new assumption is, I am deeply loved, your scene might be feeling a hand in yours, hearing a voice say, I love you, and knowing it is true. Now, enter that scene, not as a distant observer, as the one living it. Feel the textures, hear the sounds. Let your body respond as if it is happening now. Stay in that scene until it feels natural, until it feels like a memory. And then, with the feeling of the wish fulfilled still in your chest, whisper to yourself, it is done. This is the new assumption planted. And because the old structure is gone, because the ground is clear, this seed will take root. It must. There is nothing to contradict it. The tower has fallen, the void has been entered, and now the new is born. Do this practice for at least 7 days. Every night, before sleep, release the burning structure, enter the void, and plant the new assumption. Neville said the best time to impress the subconscious is the moment between waking and sleeping, that drowsy state he called the state akin to sleep. Use it. Let the new assumption be the last thing you feel before you drift off, and then let it grow. Step back with me now and look at what we have uncovered. 2 systems, Neville's mystical Christianity and psychological idealism on one hand, and the Western esoteric tradition encoded in the tarot on the other. Both arrived at the same truth. Creation requires destruction. The new cannot be born until the old is cleared away. And the destruction, far from being a sign of failure, is the sign that the work is succeeding. Why does this keep happening? Why do traditions separated by centuries and continents and languages keep arriving at this same insight? Because it is true. Not true in the sense of historically verifiable. True in the sense of psychologically and spiritually inevitable. Consciousness does not tolerate contradiction. Reality does not conform to 2 opposing assumptions. If you persist in a new state, the old state must dissolve. That is not a rule Neville made up. That is not a symbol the tarot invented. That is the structure of consciousness itself. The mystics knew it. The Kabbalists knew it. The alchemists knew it. They called it solve et coagula. Dissolve and coagulate. Break down the old form so the new form can emerge. The Hindus called it the dance of Shiva, creation and destruction as one continuous movement. The Buddhists spoke of emptiness, the void from which all forms arise and into which all forms return. And the Christians, the esoteric Christians, the ones Neville belonged to, encoded it in the death and resurrection of Christ. Paul said, I die daily. He did not mean physical death, he meant the death of the old man, the death of the ego's claim to be separate from God, the death of the false assumptions that kept him bound. And each death was a resurrection. Each collapse was a clearing. Each tower was a liberation. Neville saw this. He saw that the tower card, and the death of the old man, and the crucifixion, and the alchemical solve, and the void of the mystics were all the same teaching. And he taught it plainly, if you want to change, something in you must die. And that death is not your tragedy, it is your triumph. What does this tell us about the nature of reality? It tells us that reality is not fixed, it is not solid, it is fluid, responsive, alive. It is consciousness taking form. And when consciousness changes, form must follow. The old form cannot remain. It is struck by lightning, it falls. And in the space it leaves, the new is born. And what does this tell us about ourselves? It tells us that we are not the structures we have built. We are not the stories we have told. We are not the tower. We are the consciousness that built the tower, and we are the consciousness that can let it fall. We are the lightning and the ground and the seed and the sky. We are the I am before anything is added to it. And from that I am, we can build anything. This is why the convergence matters. Because when you see that Neville and the Tarot and the Kabbalists and the alchemists and the mystics all say the same thing, you realize you are not following one man's teaching. You are stepping into a stream of truth that has always been here, waiting for those who are ready to see it. You are not alone in this. You are not the first to feel your world crumble and wonder if you are failing. You are not the first to hear the instruction to let the old man die and feel terror rise in your chest. You are walking a path that has been walked for millennia, and every mystic who ever walked it said the same thing: let the tower fall. Enter the void. Trust the new. It is already done. And so we return to the title of this episode. When is destruction the answer? You know now. Destruction is the answer when the structure you are living in was built on a lie, and you have chosen to live in truth. Destruction is the answer when the old assumption can no longer contain the new one. Destruction is the answer when the tower stands between you and your freedom. The collapse you fear is the clearing you need. The burning structure is not your life. It is the false framework you mistook for your life. And when it falls, you do not fall with it. You discover you were never in the tower. You were always the one watching, the one choosing, the one who is. Tonight, as you go to sleep, practice what we explored together. See the old structure burning. Do not save it. Let it fall. Rest in the void. Feel the stillness. Feel the I am that remains when every story is stripped away. And then, gently, tenderly, plant the new assumption. Feel it as real. Let it be the last thing you know before sleep takes you, and trust that in the morning something will have shifted. Not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. If this exploration has opened something in you, if you feel the convergence between Neville and the Tower card the way I do, a like or a subscription keeps this work alive, and I am grateful for every mind that walks this path with us. The old man is dying. That is not your failure. That is your freedom. The tower is falling. That is not your ruin. That is your liberation. And in the void that follows, in the silence and the stillness, the new is already being born. You are not what you were. You are becoming what you have always been. Blessed collapse. Blessed clearing. Blessed tower. Let it fall and let yourself rise. The world is yourself pushed out. And tonight, you are pushing out something new. Sleep in the wish fulfilled. And wake as the one who has already crossed over.